Welcome back. We are back with Reflect and Connect, and it's Suicide Prevention Month here across the world. And if you didn't know, nearly 800,000 people die from suicide every single year, and since 2022, that number is increasing across the board. So joining us today is none other than Charlotte McCullough, mental health specialist, and she's here to talk to us about prevention and the signs and how that all happens. So welcome back to the show.
Yeah.
We're always so happy when you're here with us.
Thank you.
You add so much.
Yeah.
So let's get into it.
Yes.
Suicide prevention. I know that's a heavy one. I think we've both dealt with that too. Mm-hmm. But what are some of the things that make people decide they want to do that?
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for shedding light on this topic during this month, Suicide Prevention Month. I think it's so important. It's one of those topics that's really hard to talk about, but so needed to talk about, right? And especially amongst our culture, especially amongst the African American culture, you know, the numbers are on the rise, and we're seeing that, you know, locally as well as nationally right now. But when we talk about suicide, we're talking about someone, you know, that has lost all hope or have had some tragic incident or some traumatic thing happen to them where they can't cope no more. That's usually where people are when they want to die by suicide and usually follow through with it. But some of the signs, there's this myth when it comes to suicide that a person who's having suicidal thoughts, they look sad and they look just dreary and they look like all hope is gone. And that's just not true. That's not true. Someone can look totally normal and still be in that state of wanting to die by suicide. So the best thing I would say is normalizing these talks that we're having. If you discern that someone is going through a rough time, if you're feeling and you notice that their behaviors are off, you know, if they're binging or restricting in any area of their lives, reaching out to them with the mindset of care and concern, not to embarrass someone or to highlight what they're really going through, but with care and concern. Imagine how that would feel if you're in a place of lowness, right? And someone comes to you with care and concern and resources in private. It kind of make you feel like someone really cares. And a lot of times when people are in that place, in that low state, they feel like there is no other option. Nobody cares.
And it's so sad.
And I was so happy when I found out you were coming this week, because I was literally reading a story yesterday about a 13-year-old boy who committed suicide 2 weeks after the school year started because he was getting bullied. And that's something that a lot of people aren't really talking about. A lot of kids are starting to do it. Do the signs look the same in kids as it would in an adult?
You know, Chris, that's a really good question. In children, sometimes you'll just notice behavior shifts. In school, their grades, they'll be withdrawn. Sometimes you'll hear them say it. You'll hear them being more anxious than other times. Wetting the bed for children.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. Appetite changes for children. And then sometimes just totally not wanting to do the things that, you know, they usually find fulfillment in. Yeah, those are some of the signs for children. And I think it's so good that you brought that up. Because a lot of times when we talk about suicide, we only talk about the adults. But now we need to talk more about our children and normalizing the conversation around the word suicide. So, you know, it's taboo for a lot of us in our homes. You just stay away from it, right? You don't say the word suicide. But now it's in our faces, you know, and it's touching everyone's home now. It's just not certain socioeconomic status people. It's everywhere. It's across the board.
And it's all ages. I'm glad that he did bring that up, because you see a lot more children now taking their own life, especially with the influence of social media, with the peer pressure. So how does someone talk to their children about that peer pressure now? Because back in our days, we're not dating us. But it was a little bit different, right? We had a beeper. Things are different. Now it's the internet. So how can parents even have that conversation before it goes left?
Right. I think with social media, our children have so much at their fingertips, you know, and it's hard to really monitor that now. So having that conversation with your children, getting into their world, finding out what they're into, finding out what they're searching on their phones, you know, find out what are the things that their friends are into, and having that organic conversation with them and normalizing talking about their emotions. But the first thing I like to talk about when we're talking about talking to our children about our mental wellness is the parents have to take care of themselves. Because if they're not taking care of themselves, it'll be kind of hard to take care of their children.
Yeah.
So to hear things that their children are going through or the things that's going through their minds, you know, because if your child comes to you and say, I'm struggling with the will to live, you know, I don't want to be here anymore. If you're not well, you're going to go all over the place.
Right,
like,
right.
Yeah.
You know, and it may be a time where your child just want to vent. They just want to talk. So I would say starting with having organic conversations
That's good.
with your children and just make it age appropriate. If you have a 5-year-old, talk about 5-year-old things, you know. If you have a teenager, talk about teenage things, but normalize talking to them about their world and normalize talking about emotions and feelings.
I think they need to normalize mental health counseling for children too. It's not, it's an adult thing, but you little ones can go too. Maybe mom and dad, right, doesn't know how to have the conversation.
It's very true.
So they go to someone else.
Yes, and we have, in the clinical world, we have child specialists or we have play therapists who specialize in play therapy with children. So it's not the normal talk therapy, but they do different activities with the children to draw out that emotion, to normalize those things that's going on internally.